Buckle up, folks, because today we're diving headfirst into a world where the battle for podiums happens in pixels. Milliseconds matter more than tire wear, and the next great racing champion might be just sitting in their bedroom with a high end sim rig and a questionable sleep schedule. Our guest today is the ultimate pit boss of esports racing, the man turning virtual speed demons into real world races. From unearthing motorsport talent through Nishan's GD Academy to working alongside none other than Fernando Alonso, he's been at the heart of proving that esports isn't just a game. It's full throttle, high stakes proving ground for future of motorsports. Now, as head of esports at Motorsport UK, he is leading the charge to make sim racing bigger, better, and potentially even more dramatic than a Red Bull Team Radio meltdown. We'll talk about what it takes to go from a home setup to a professional cockpit where sim racing is headed, and whether we'll one day see an F1 esports champion take the wheel of a real F1 car. Oh, and because we love chaos here at Stripping the Dipping, we'll put him through a rapid fire round where things could get even more unpredictable than, Ferrari's race strategies. So let's welcome the man who lives in 240 hertz and never rage quits, Paul Crawford. Welcome to Stripping the Dipping. How are you today?
Hello, Georgie. Yes, very well, thank you, and thank you for having me on. Very much, much appreciated, and looking forward to it.
Let me dive straight away to the questions. Tell me your first motorsport memory and what led you into this whole motorsport career.
I would say it was definitely Formula One 1996, showing my age a little bit. Damon Hill winning the World Championship and Murray Walker's kind of famous commentary line about having a lump in his throat and having to stop at the end. I think I remember the Adelaide incident between Schumacher and Hill in 1994, but I don't know. But I definitely remember the 1996 and winning the championship when I was 9. I'd always liked cars, always liked motorsport. It was it wasn't like somebody introduced me to it. It was just in me from day one. Cars, tractors, lorries, motorsport, racing, anything with an engine, basically. And yeah, I remember that. And I also had the 1996 Formula One season review video back in the day that I watched until it broke.
So if I ask you to introduce yourself, and if I ask you, who is Paul Crawford, how would you introduce yourself?
Well, I am probably slightly older than the average age for an esports player, gamer. But yeah, I was brought up in the northwest of England. I love motorsport from day one. I was also a gamer, so not just racing. Loved motorsport and kind of any computer game really. I had PlayStation, Game Boy, etc. And yeah, I kind of went through the processes like every young child. I wanted to be a racing driver. I wanted to be a Formula One driver. I sent letters to F1 teams saying, how do I become an F1 driver when I was 12 years old? And realized pretty quickly that wasn't going to happen. I did indoor karting and I didn't even own my own kart. I was never going to be there. But then that kind of quickly shifted when I was a bit older in secondary school to kind of thinking about working in the industry. And yeah, it's worked out okay so far.
Well, that actually gave us a huge, an explanation of who Paul Crawford is. But let's dig in deep. You've had an incredible career bridging the gap between sim racing and real world motorsport with projects like the Nishan GD Academy and World Fast Gamer. What was your own journey like into the worlds of esport?
Yeah, so esports, like I said, I was always a gamer. I played Gran Turismo. I played the F1 games from like 97, 98, 99. And then a friend of mine at the time introduced me to a game called GTR on a computer, which was very much a simulator as opposed to kind of a more arcadey game like F1 or Gran Turismo. And it kind of blew my mind. And I was like, wow, I didn't this is how I'd be a racing driver. So I got that on the family PC. I bought the game that you used to do back in the day on a disc and played that. I played it all the way through university, all of those different kind of game titles like Race 07, GTR Evolution, R Factor 1. Kind of moved away from the F1 titles, although I still did follow the sport in the real world. But I actually did motorsport management at university because a friend of mine showed me that at school that you could do that, which I had no idea. I put it as my second choice. I failed to get my first choice, luckily, because that would have been criminology, which I'm not sure would have been that useful for me. And yeah, I ended up doing motorsport at Swansea University. And off the back of that, I actually worked at the Silverstone Grand Prix in the summer of my second year, just in one of the merchandise stores. Got the opportunity through the course, literally selling caps and merchandise from 5 a.m. till 9 p.m. that you do at the Grand Prix. I went back the following year at the end of my third year, and I kind of knew at that point I need to get my foot in the door of motorsport, because at this point, esports wasn't a thing at all. It was very much a hobby, but I knew I wanted to get into motorsport. And I saw a job come up at Silverstone to work in the call centre. So I applied for that job, got the role. Kind of spent 10 months doing that, taking calls, selling tickets to touring cars, club meetings, driving experiences, all of that. And then kind of the progression from there was I went on to a graduate management trainee scheme. So I went around all the different departments of Silverstone for a couple of years, and this is kind of, there has to be a bit of luck in your career. This is where the lucky bit came in. That the department that I ended up with in 2010 had already run the first ever GT Academy on behalf of Nissan, kind of as they won the pitch basically to run that program for them, and it was run at Silverstone. And I joined at that point, and they'd just done the 2010 one, which I worked on when it was part of Silverstone. And then they offered the chance from Nissan to set up as their own agency to run not just Nissan GT Academy, but also kind of manage the motorsport program and the athletes. So training programs, equipment, driver kit, logistics for the drivers, their travel, etc. And they kind of said, do you want to come with us and come to the agency and leave Silverstone? So I then ended up working on all of the GT Academies, with Jan Mardenborough. I lived with him for 6 months, and then all the way through to 2015. And really that is, what is that now, 15 years ago. It was so far ahead of its time. Darren Cox from Nissan at the time, he famously said it multiple times, but there was articles saying that we were going to kill drivers if we put them in real world race cars from gaming, and it was kind of unheard of. But these people we were genuinely changing lives. People were becoming racing drivers from it. And my role then, kind of after GT Academy, I went through different phases with other companies. I did traditional event management for a while, but then I ended up going freelance for a while, and then I ended up helping run the Mercedes F1 Esports team freelance, which then led to other opportunities. Certainly then when lockdown came along, we ran the All-Star Series, which you kind of alluded to earlier, World's Fastest Gamer, Virtual Le Mans with Fernando Alonso, and I kind of ended up working at WTF1 for a while, and then I had a call from Motorsport UK saying that they were getting involved in esports. What should they do? We had a chat, and here I am. In a nutshell, I tried to keep it brief.
I mean, that's one hell of a journey.
Yeah, it is pretty unbelievable when you look back at it, but you don't kind of realize it when you're in it, I guess.
I mean, you're from here to here to here. You've been everywhere within a time slot. So people who knows people who knows people, and
Yeah.
connecting. So in your head, sir, and your brand face, it's multi-million worth it, because like they say, your net worth is your network. So basically your network is net worth, and if we calculate it that's a huge profit that you have with your face itself. But
Yeah.
let's talk about your experience. What was it like watching sim races transition to real cars? And did anyone ever totally shock you with their talent?
Yeah, it was a really interesting process, and it still is, because I mean, from my point of view, and maybe we'll come on to this later, but it's kind of a proven concept now that you can go from sim racing to the real world. Back in those days, it sounds like it's a long time ago, but back in those days, it was unproven. So seeing people make that transition, and it really makes you realise the biggest point was that being a racing driver isn't just about being fast on a track, because there's a lot of people who can drive fast in a car around a track competently and quickly when they're on their own. It's normal sunny weather, but then when you add in rain, or you add in night racing, or you add in driver changes, and you add in the pressure of having to perform, and when you add in kind of all of the other expectations that you're meant to meet when you're racing for somebody like Nissan, a global brand. The interesting piece was that these drivers in sim racing, and all the way up to World's Fastest Gamer and beyond, is that they've often got to that level on their own. They've just put in the grind, got to that level, and then as soon as they kind of sign a contract to race for somebody, there's then we have to do it our way. You have to think about your nutrition and your training and your physical training, and there's a lot of, well, I got to here on my own, why do I need this? And it's explaining that process. So seeing how people adapt or didn't adapt, and each driver needed different priorities. Some might need more help on the physical side, some might need more help on the mental side, and we were even in those days we actually employed chimp management who worked with British Cycling to help with the mental approach and the psychology of being a competitive racing driver. There was a number of times that we were really impressed with drivers on track, that even drivers who didn't actually necessarily go on to winning GT Academy. Jan Mardenborough is very much kind of the most well-known GT Academy driver, but there were drivers like Wolfgang Wright who were very, very quick on their day, who could put in probably the fastest lap time. But I mean, all of them, all of the GT Academy winners and World's Fastest Gamers winners won it for a reason. They were really good on track, and it's all about kind of that next step of adapting, understanding the business side of things, understanding kind of the whole package of being a racing driver.
So, in my belief, Motorsport UK is the federation for United Kingdom for motorsport, is it?
Yeah. So we're the governing body of all four-wheeled motorsport in the UK.
UK. So, can sim races really make it? Like, as you mentioned, Jan is actually one of the people who we've seen taking that leap from gaming to racing. But do you think sim races can truly compete at the highest level of real world motorsports, or is there a ceiling? Let's take Formula One for an example.
Yeah, I completely 100% believe that they can, and that is now getting proven more and more, because you've got stories. I mean, there's multiple stories now. There's a driver called Deegan Fairclough who won the British F4 Real World Championship last year, going into GB3 this year, I believe. And he came from a esports competition run by Rocket, and he has been unbelievable in terms of his talent on track. He was one of the winningest drivers in a championship season. He's been fastest in testing in GB3. So I completely believe that if everything goes right, he can get to the top. I think if you look at somebody like Seb Job, who is a Red Bull esports driver who tested the Porsche Carrera Cup recently and famously got put in the Red Bull F1 car. He was at a decent level, considering he'd never done anything in the real world. And I don't think that it would be too far away from the reality that if he gets the chance to do a season and puts time in and has the testing and the right support, that he could genuinely be right up at the front. And if you look at James Baldwin as well, when he won World's Fastest Gamer and did British GT, he was on pole position for his first race in a GT3 car at Alton Park, in his own right. So I completely believe that sim races can be right at the front of any championship, even F1, and it's all about time and just like in anybody's career, but also as a racing driver, it's all about everything coming together and working.
So, as we mentioned about Motorsport UK being the federation for four-wheel motorsports, as the head of esports at Motorsport UK, which is the federation, what does your role entail and what are your primary objectives?
So I think I'll answer the second one first. The primary objective really is for people to understand now that sim racing can be seen, and we see it as a motorsport discipline in its own right. So it is now a motorsport discipline with the lowest barrier to entry in terms of cost and ease of access compared to any. I kind of liken it to indoor karting. You can do indoor karting pretty cheaply, but as soon as you go into the realms of buying your own kart, it then becomes significantly more expensive. Whereas obviously you still have to outlay for some equipment for sim racing, but it's a one-off cost and off you go. So kind of highlighting that fact that, the equipment, the hardware, the software is at a level now where it is a legitimate form of motorsport. You can make a career out of it, not just as a driver, but, as a team manager, coaching, broadcasting, marketing, etc. It is really important. And we are in a unique position as Motorsport UK that, we're not like a startup. We're a governing body that's been around for many, many years. And I have the support of everybody in the building that I'm in now, which doesn't look like my backdrop. But it's very tricky to balance my role, really, because I'm a team of one currently. I still have the support of the other departments like marketing and commercial and all of that, but so it's getting this fine balance between business development, kind of developing what we're doing. I work alongside the FIA, and they have a esports commission that's helping try and kind of direct where the sport is going. They recently introduced an international sporting code for sim racing. If you want to run under the FIA banner and run world championships and things like that. And then it's kind of working out where we fit and what we need to deliver. We have a membership that offers drivers a chance to try iRacing for free, which is normally £100 or $100 subscription. It gives you access to all of the different events and championships that we run, and I kind of manage all of those events. I deliver those championships. I was in London today at the College of Esports in London, kind of meeting them, finding out what they do and seeing if there's any collaboration. So there's a lot of business development, learning all the different ins and outs of the industry, because we're always learning. So it's a balance between kind of business development, partnerships, and then also the delivery and admin of running multiple championships on multiple different game titles, really.
So Motorsport UK launched the Esports Hub to support the sim racing community. Can you tell us more about this initiative and its impact on the esport landscape as well?
Yeah, so the Esports Hub is at the centre of that is a website, but it's also a Discord server that we run with kind of 1,500 people in there now. And the whole kind of point of it was that we are approaching sim racing and esports. We're an unbiased party in this. We're not trying to sell products or services or anything like that for gain. So we were very aware that we're in a unique position. So the hub is somewhere where you can find out how to get started in the sport, decipher some of kind of the jargon or the marketing spiel that you might see. It also gives access to the membership that I mentioned about and the events that we do, so you can get involved with those. And the idea of the events that we run is that because of our connections and our position, we can offer events for everybody, not just professional level, that are kind of high quality. So they are broadcast, stewarded under rules and regulations, with great prizes that are unique. We work with people like Porsche Cars GB and deliver a community championship for them, for anybody to take part in, which, in the real world, who gets to race in a Porsche licensed championship? Not very many people. So it's opening up these opportunities for the industry for the community, to then be able to, get involved in more. And then also kind of going from what we do in the real world around talent pathways and talent identification, we are trying to develop a bit more of a talent pathway for people who are trying to become, maybe professional sim racers, which we're very aware, isn't everybody, but there is more and more people. I get approached a lot at events, parents saying, where can my daughter or my son take part in events to get noticed? We were doing karting for a couple of years. We've run out of money, so we're going to go put them in the route of sim racing. So, we've developed pathways up to, we run a full kind of British esports championship, which has some of the biggest teams in there, the F1 teams like Ferrari, Aston Martin, Williams, Alpine, G2, people like that, Guild Esports. But we have a feeder series underneath that, which anybody can try and qualify for, which broadcast on the same broadcast. And then the top two from that get a free entry into F4 Esports. And the top two from the previous two championships have gone on to sign for pro teams. So we're really trying to extend that further, so go even lower, introducing sim racing to people who've not had the chance. So people like myself, when I was younger, I was very lucky that somebody happened to show me this sim racing game. But nowadays, if I got shown a sim rig and was like, wow, I didn't know you could do this, that's kind of one part of what we're trying to do. And then finally, kind of on that community level, there are a lot of people where sim racing and esports is their hobby. That's what they spend their disposable income on. So giving them kind of great races, great projects, competitions to take part in that weren't necessarily available before, and that we can deliver in our kind of unique position within the industry, really.
So while you do all these work with esports and teams and people, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced in promoting and integrating esports within the traditional motorsport community? Because even still, I believe there are people who prefer the traditional motorsports over sim racing, and sometimes they might not see how important it is for the kids growing up who are getting into motorsports to have the experience, at least in sim racing, so that they can compete in the real world motorsport as well. So what sort of issues and challenges have you faced, and do tell me.
I think the main issue, and it all stems from kind of stereotypes and stigmas around esports. It's very much seen as, it's just teenagers in their bedroom, it's just playing games, it's not, there's no kind of purpose or substance to it. Whereas, like I said previously, the last 5-10 years, and certainly since COVID, the growth of the hardware and the software has kind of completely changed that, which is why we're trying to help with this kind of journey. But I think it's the hardest bit is the stereotypes. So you've got all of these people who are probably over the age of 25 who've taken part in motorsport for 20, 30 years, and they just think that this is playing a computer game. And what we're trying to show them is that this is beneficial to you as a racing driver, because it is, everybody uses the example, but you can learn tracks you've not been to. There's so many different cars, there's so many different tracks that you can use now on simulators. But also there's other elements to it. It is practicing racecraft, it's practicing being on track with other cars, how you can line up overtakes, that sort of thing, which I just think it's about exposing people to it and getting them to do it now, because they might have tried it in 2010 when I started, 2008, when the equipment wasn't very good, and it was very much in its infancy, and I completely understand why they would be kind of a bit more, I don't get it. But I think when you've got people now like Max Verstappen, who does sim racing in his spare time, voluntarily, he runs it, or part owns a sim racing team, and he is streaming on Twitch every week that the mainstream media never seems to talk about. But yeah, he's kind of streaming every Wednesday or whichever day it is with his Team Redline team. But he has said in interviews, with David Coulthard, saying, I like doing sim racing. It keeps me sharp. It maintains my kind of level, and it's fun. I like racing, and it's just a different form of racing. And he likes the challenge of trying to be as quick as the pro level sim racers, who are very, very quick. And obviously in sim racing, you have an infinite amount of time to practice, compared to the real world. So he likes that challenge. So I just hope that, part of what we do, it helps break down that stereotype. And I think one thing that will help with this is we run the British Kart Championship, and all these drivers from the age of 8 to about 15, 16, most of them are already doing it. It's normal to them. So when you fast forward another 10 years and they're kind of in their 20s and 30s, it will just be kind of normal in the industry. You won't have to do that sales pitch of, this is why sim racing is good. It's just be a normal thing that people do. I can't wait for that bit.
I mean, now you can results rather than pitching an idea without, because the vision is already out there and people can see the results also. So how do you see sim racing evolving in the next 5 to 10 years, and what role will organizations like Motorsports UK play in that evolution? Because I'm pretty sure that we never thought sim racing will come this far, but due to COVID, it took a huge rise. And now every person that we know and we talk about have done it or still doing it. So where do you think this is going in the future?
I think that's kind of a multi-tiered question in terms of depending which sector of the industry. But I'd say kind of at the top level with the FIA bringing international sporting codes and the opportunities for World Championships. You've got the Olympic Esports Games on the horizon in 2027. I just think that it's one of the bits we're trying to help with is it's just going to become more and more like a professional sport at the top, which is the way it has to go if you want brands and companies to get involved with it. It can't be the Wild West. So I think on the sports side of things, it will just grow and become much more of an established professional sport, and then kind of the drip down effect of that with more people taking part. And I think we're in a really interesting space at the minute with the games available to do it. Some people call it the golden era, which you never know until it's past, right? But we've got iRacing, Le Mans Ultimate's pretty new. We've got Assetto Corsa, Evo coming online currently. WRC games and things like that. So I think we are in a stage of growth. I would say that kind of the arc went massively up at COVID. It came back down a little bit, and now we're like at the plateau where it's kind of shaking itself out. The established people who are here to stay are now here and helping develop. So I think it's only going to go one way, which is up, and it's just trying to steer that in the right direction. We as a governing body deal with the kind of the less sexy bits, could say, which are things like safeguarding and licensing of content and things like that. But that is what needs to happen in a sport, and you need to learn from what's gone before in traditional sports and not fall into those traps. So helping with that is very much on our agenda.
You've worked with notable figures like Fernando Alonso. How do professional drivers perceive sim racing like them? And do you see more of them getting involved in the future? Because we've seen the youngsters, if you take Max Verstappen and sometimes Lando Norris, and everyone is doing the sim racing. But when it comes to the older generation, Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, I hope that they're not going to come with pitchforks for calling them older generations, but you know what I mean. So,
yeah.
So how do you see their role, and do you see more of them getting involved in the future?
I don't see them getting more involved. I think, like everybody, by the time you're, again, without being mean about anybody, but when you're older, you kind of know what you like. You've tried lots of different things. And, Fernando in lockdown was massively into it. He did it a lot. But when he was involved, he was more on it, more competitive than almost anybody else I've ever worked with. We managed his team when he entered virtual Le Mans during, must have been 2020 or early 21. And, he was doing full stints in his car, coming back with spreadsheets of how he changed the setup, what lap times he was doing, the tyre wear rates. And, he was treating it as if it was like any other race or competition that he wanted to try and win. But other than that, I think, a lot of them tried it in the competition that we did and they had fun at the time because there was nothing else to do. But yeah, certainly the older generation, I don't think they're going to be the ones that we're going to be able to convert. I think it's kind of Max Verstappen and those people that are leading the charge, that era, and then kind of younger. But I mean, there's a lot of people like me, I'm 38 now. I'm not yet at F1 retirement age, so I'll carry on with that. But it's, I'm probably a bit older than most people think of when you think of esports. But sim racing's age is actually a bit higher than traditional esports because, like you said, when it becomes somebody's hobby, there's a lot of disposable income. And also, we just want to be racing drivers, and it's the way that we can do it, basically. So regardless of age, and there's content creators in sim racing who are in their 40s and 50s, which is great to see as well.
For listeners interested in pursuing a career in sim racing, what advice would you offer to help them get started and succeed? I mean, let's forget about the succession part. How would they start?
So it kind of depends. If you want to become a driver, I mean, it's fairly simple. It's, getting we always say equipment doesn't matter to a certain level in terms of if you've got a steering wheel and pedals, you can get right up to very near the top, and maybe you need better equipment when you get further on. So if you buy a steering wheel and pedals for £100 off Facebook Marketplace or eBay and attach it to your desk, that's all you need to get started. And then, on our website, we've got a whole list of about 45 different communities that have established the industry. We vet them in terms of that they're a safe, fun place to get involved. They're running the right way. And they're across all the different games, from Gran Turismo to Rally to Forza to iRacing. And just, it's where you can find like-minded people and go racing. If you go onto iRacing, you start as a rookie. You can only access certain cars. You get help through the game on how to set up your equipment, and you go racing, and then you just progress. And then once you come out of rookies, you get a rating like you do in chess, for example. You enter a race, you do well, your rating goes up. If you don't do well, your rating goes down, and it's all match made. And it's a fairly easy one that you can just keep racing and try and get your rating up till you're at a point where big teams are going to take notice of you. But that's where we're trying to help with the events that we do. It's like introducing you to taking part in league races where you race the same people each week, and this talent pathway of, well, look, you can enter our Formula Ford 1600 Championship or try and enter. We do it each year, so if you fail this year, then you've got a target for next year, and then you might get the exposure of taking part on the broadcast and get teams to see you. But it's really just like everything. It's like, just get started. Don't worry about having the best equipment or fastest PC or the best internet. It's like, just do what you can do, and you will kind of find your way if you're into it. It's like, people say, how did I get started? It's like, well, I just did what I could at the time. I played on a Game Boy with an F1 game, and then you go up to the next thing and you get a PlayStation for Christmas maybe, and you're like, oh, well, I'll get the F1 game. And it just naturally kind of, you follow a path. So it's just get started. There's a lot more places now that have, there's a lot more sim racing venues in the UK now where you can go and try out equipment, like a Brutesy have a showroom. There's Simply Race with equipment there, and you can go and try it like you would in indoor karting. If you go indoor karting and go, not for me, that's fine. And it's the same with sim racing. You can try it and you might go, oh my God, I need this in my life. This is my new everything.
So, I want to ask you, let's talk about the similarities and the differences, but from the traditional motorsports to esports, but I have a few differences. Anybody can say the differences. Like, for an example, when you drive in sim racing, you don't harm yourself or injure yourself in real life, nor you don't damage the cars. So there are, some of the differences that we can actually say. But what are the similarities that you can say between the esports and traditional motorsports?
The similarities, did you say, or the lack of the similarities?
Yes.
Well, I think the similarities are because it's simulating what you do. How you approach driving the car. So if you go down to like the granular detail, it's like you can learn tire management, not turning the steering wheel too much, not scrubbing too much speed, how you apply the throttle aggressively or smoothly, depending on the car, how you brake. Do you do trail braking? Do you need to brake in a straight line and come off the brakes and turn in? Kind of that driving technique is very much transferable. And the beauty of it is kind of, if you then get the chance to drive a real world race car, and it's like, and the team will say, oh, you need to drive it in this manner, you can then go and do that in the sim to practice. So it's like, if you have this, if you need to really turn the steering wheel hard to get it turned in on that car, you can go and do it on the sim. And also kind of what I was saying earlier about racecraft, just being on track with other cars, because in the real world, you don't get hardly any practice of that. Obviously, it's pretty much only when you're racing. Sure, in practice, you might have it a little bit, but most of the time you'll get out of the way, or you'll leave a gap because you want to be lapping. Whereas in sim racing, you can do, there's hundreds of races all the time on iRacing and Le Mans Ultimate and R Factor 2, and you can just learn what it's like to be on track, where you can leave space, where's best to line up and overtake, the do's and don'ts of that sort of thing. So those are the similarities, and kind of just going back to your point on why they're different. Yes, you don't get a damage bill. You can damage the car, but you don't get the bill after, which is the main thing. But I think one thing that really came up when I was working with James Baldwin when he was doing his British GT Championship is that, he was like, oh my God, you just don't get any time in the car. They have like an hour practice session. You're like, oh, great, I've got an hour. It's like, well, no, it's not, because you need to go out and the pro driver will go out and bed in a set of brakes for 2 laps. Then you'll go out and on an installation lap. And then, oh, there's a problem with the car. So actually we've lost 10 minutes. And then you need to do an out lap, 3 flying laps, come back in, check the car, change the tyres. Then the pro driver goes in. So actually you end up only getting like 8 to 10 flying laps, maybe, in practice. Whereas again, in sim racing, you just do as much as you want. And it's so in the real world, there's much more pressure on extracting the most out of the car and getting the most information out of the car and the most speed out of the car instantly, rather than being able to just take your time.
Before asking you the last question, before we jump into rapid fire questions, I have an extra question to ask you. After listening to all these details that you've been telling me, and for all the listeners, I want to ask regarding the evolution of esports. Now, in real motorsports, even for Formula One, we use wind tunnels. And then nowadays in Red Bull, they're trying to use AI-driven simulations to reduce tunnel dependence. So they're using the CFG, if I'm not wrong, CFD, sorry, computational fluid dynamics and all that, just to cut away from the wind tunnels. So we've been talking about all these AI all the time in all the platforms, but do you think that AI can be a thing for esports as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's already been used quite a lot. There's a number of coaching tools that are AI that will analyze your driving technique as you're driving around and say,
we are having a small issue from the technology side, the tech side. We can't hear Paul properly.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Oh, AI, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so AI is already being used in sim racing quite a lot. There's a number of coaching tools that are AI, coaching you around the track as you're driving around, telling you where you can go faster. So that is certainly a way. I know that there's hopes that they can bring in kind of race stewarding with AI, which I think could be interesting. And kind of your crew chief could be quite a cool one, where they're telling you how much fuel you need to put in rather than working it out yourself, and being more kind of, because in the real world, obviously, drivers don't choose how much fuel they're putting in the car or what tyres they're putting on. That's done by, their engineer, the crew chief, or their team, even at kind of entry-level motorsport. Whereas in sim racing, you kind of have to do it all. And I always feel like there's definitely a space there for AI to kind of fill that gap for you. So I think there's definitely ways that it can be done. There is AI racing in terms of, you can race against AI instead of real people, which helps if you don't want to go into the online world, basically. I have also seen Twitch channels that just broadcast AI cars racing against each other, which is mad, but here we are.
Mind blowing, but at the same time, that's crazy to think like that's wild. Like you can have an AI racing, and you can actually race against the AI as a partner, as a competitor. That's crazy. Have you ever seen anybody winning, beating AI?
Oh yeah, I mean, this isn't probably AI as we think. Being able to race against the computer, as it was always called when I was younger, has always been around. But it's just the ability of the AI has gone up. And normally, what you can do is you can turn it up or down as to how difficult it is. So it's not like a chess master trying to beat a chess bot. It's a little bit different. But yeah, it is certainly an interesting point. AI is very much in fashion at the minute and here to stay, I think. So we definitely need to get on board.
So across your career, you've been in everywhere, and being very connected in the motorsport. So across your career, what's the most insane esports moment you've ever experienced and witnessed?
I mean, the most insane experiences for me were going to places like India to do like the Indian national finals, where esports is such an emerging sport compared to kind of places like the UK. But I think in terms of an actual on-track moment, I think it was either Alonso's untimely end to the virtual Le Mans series when we were managing that after his stint. It was just one of those things where he got caught out by a way that he got a black flag, which meant he had to come into the pits, but he also only had enough fuel for one more lap, but he didn't set the car to refuel instead of serving the penalty. So then he served the penalty, but then couldn't refuel and didn't have enough fuel to finish the lap. So we ended up getting booted out of virtual Le Mans because he ran out of fuel, and that was one of the most kind of yeah. And teams were offering to push him around the track for a lap to get round, but the organisers wouldn't allow it, unfortunately. Things like that. But in lockdown, when we went from, it was literally the Australian Grand Prix got cancelled, and 3 days later we were delivering this event that had Sebastian Vettel, Mario Andretti, Juan Pablo Montoya, all of these massive names. Jacques Villeneuve was racing using a controller. Dindo Capello, Emanuele Pirro was racing in a garden chair with a entry-level steering wheel, and they were all just getting involved. And and you just sat there like, how has this happened? How am I involved in this?
That's crazy, and that's an amazing experience. Okay, so let's jump into the juicy questions that I'll be asking you. The rapid fire questions. The first question is the classic question that we've been asking for 4 years from every single guest who's been coming over the podcast, including Mario Andretti, by the way.
Right.
So I hope that you usually enjoy good pizza.
No, you don't put pineapple on pizza. And in fact, I go even further than that. You don't put fruit in a main course. And I'm talking, you don't put cranberry on your turkey, you don't put applesauce on your pork, none of that. Not interested.
Before I even jumped in and asked, what do you think about pineapple on pizza? You named questions straight away when I asked you about the pizza.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course. What else would it be? That's the main question about pizza, right?
Ask you, would you like banana on your pizza? Because Ben Hunt did.
No. Although you can get dessert pizzas now, can't you? Which is like chocolate and instead of tomato.
I would prefer a classic pizza, like margarita pizza. But yeah. All right. So this question is taxi dinner avoid. You have to choose let's take the Formula One grid. You have to choose past or present, a driver to drive you to the restaurant from your house to the restaurant as a taxi driver. And you need to choose one person to have dinner with you and have a chat, a long conversation, about how's life, why did you fail at this race, and how did you win this, random stuff. And then you have to choose one person that you would avoid at any cost.
So what are the options? Sorry, a taxi driver, somebody to then spend time with, and somebody to avoid.
Yep.
Okay, I'll do the easy ones first. So 100% I'd spend time with Kimi Räikkönen. I don't fan boy or girl over many people, if any, but Kimi Räikkönen would be one of them. Past or present taxi driver. That's a trickier one. If you wanted like entertainment, like super aggressive driving, maybe go for Max. It would be maybe seat of your pants stuff, but hey, it would be exciting on the way. And then avoiding somebody, it feels a little bit harsh, doesn't it? Trouble is, people who I didn't like, I then ended up liking. Like, I was never a Michael Schumacher fan, but then after his career, I was always like, I liked him. I never liked Sebastian Vettel when he was winning at Red Bull, but then when he stopped winning, I was like, I like Seb.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's say Jos Verstappen, because I wouldn't want to deal with the politics of talking about intra-team relationships right now. There we go.
Good answer, I would say, because Matt Dinovsky, who came over before a week ago, he also chose the same person. He was like saying,
Oh, right.
I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
I'll just go with this person. I don't want to deal with him.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you were a sandwich, what would you call it, and what would you put in it? What ingredients would it have?
I could be really boring and say I'd be a BLT because it's dependable. Everybody likes it. Hey, say again. Sorry.
I don't think anybody can go with boring as much as Andrew, because when I asked him, Andrew was saying he fancy a sourdough sandwich with ham and cheese on it.
A BLT is dependable, so let's go with that. I am dependable in a crisis, let's say, and if you're desperate, you don't know what to pick, just go BLT. You're never going to be let down.
Okay, so these questions, I will give you 3 answers for each question, and you just have to say the correct answer. Who said this? These are famous quotes from all these motorsports athletes. So the first one: if everything seems under control, you're just not going fast enough. Number 1, Ayrton Senna. Number 2, Mario Andretti. And number 3, Lewis Hamilton.
I feel like I've heard it, but I definitely don't know the answer. I don't think it's Lewis. I think it might be Mario.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I felt like Senna was in there as a red herring because it goes with like the whole if you don't go for a gap then you're not a racing driver thing. But I was like, I think it was Mario.
Yeah. Senna would be like, if you don't see a gap, things like that. You just go.
Yeah.
So the second card. Winning is everything. The only ones who remember you when you come second are your wife and your dog. So, first answer, Niki Lauda. Second answer, Michael Schumacher. And third, Damon Hill.
Again, I don't think I've even heard that one, so I am guessing, and I'm going to guess Lauda.
So this time it's Damon Hill.
Really? Interesting. I didn't have him as that ruthless. Interesting.
Okay, the third one. To achieve anything in this game, you must be prepared to dabble in the boundary of disaster. First answer, Sir Sterling Moss. Second answer, Sebastian Vettel. Third answer, Alan Prost.
Not heard that one either, so I'm now guessing on... Who's the first one, sorry?
Sterling Moss.
I think it might be Sterling Moss.
And you're correct, sir.
Just the wording, like it feels like a more old school...
Yeah, the dabble in the boundary of disasters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. You are smart. I can say that. You're a smart. Okay.
With maybe random trivia that I don't need to know, maybe.
I'm pretty sure that you're getting that title for random trivia. All right, so fourth one. Racing is like anything before or after is just waiting. First answer, James Hunt. Second answer, Steve McQueen. Third, Juan Manuel Fangio.
I've definitely heard that one before, and I think it's Steve McQueen.
Crazy.
Yes.
Crazy.
Good. The James Hunt did throw me, because I was like, oh, maybe, but then when you said Steve McQueen, I was like, no.
Okay, the last one of these questions. The best way to make a small fortune in racing is to start with a big one. First answer, Bruce McLaren. Second answer, Eddie Jordan. Third answer, Bernie Ecclestone.
I have heard it. I don't know which one it is, and it could be any of them. So I would say you've done very well at picking people who it could have been said by. I want to say Bruce McLaren, but I don't think it is. Bernie Ecclestone.
Well, it is actually Eddie Jordan.
Yeah. It could have been any of them.
Okay, so these are the end of the Who Said This, and I have one more question for you for a rapid fire question. Esports or real racing forever? If you had to erase one from existence, are you gonna use esports or real racing? Which would you sacrifice and why?
That is really hard. That is really hard and unfair, I would say.
Poodle.
Because if you get rid of esports, then you're basically getting rid of one of the futures of the sport. But if you're getting rid of motorsport, then it's kind of the core of the sport that esports is.
Trying to build that.
I guess as head of esports at Motorsport UK, I have to say. No, hang on, because then Motorsport UK would not exist. Very tricky. I will say, let's stick with esports. I've got to commit to the cause, right?
I mean, you have a job to do, sir.
Yeah, I'll be shooting myself in the foot a little bit if I was like, yeah, let's just get rid of esports.
Do you have any hidden talents or hobbies outside of motorsports that can surprise people?
Talents or hobbies? I wouldn't say there was anything particularly interesting. I am the father of one, about to become two, so I don't have much time these days. I played golf to a very poor level. I've done a lot of different... I've done photography. I once was a photographer at a British touring car round and got some published in a hospitality brochure. You know,
What?
Maybe that's a random thing. But
that's amazing.
I've tried a lot of different things in my life, which I think is which should do. But
I'm pretty sure all these hidden talents that you've had, that's gonna knock your socks off once you become the dad of two.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
kids and juggling with esports as the head of esports for UK Motorsports, and doing all that and come to keep a sanity.
Yes. Keeping my sanity, that is my hidden power. Yeah. I'll
Well,
take that.
Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on stream. Your insights into the world of esports and intersection with traditional motorsports are truly enlightening. To our listeners, stay tuned for more exciting episodes as we continue to explore multi-faceted world of racing. Before we say goodbye, do you have any final words to say to all of these listeners, and where can people find you?
All I have to say is get involved in sim racing. It's much better than you might think it is. And go to esports.motorsportuk.org and you can find it all out there.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Until next time, keep your engines reviving and your simulators running so that next time you race, you might actually find Paul telling you guys over the commentaries, that's not how you should be doing. And this is your penalty for that.